Hi, everybody. This is Todd Krieger. Today I'm talking to you about sexual intimacy after betrayal, after the discovery of the infidelity. It's obviously different for different couples. I've been working with couples where they've been dealing with the pain of infidelity, the discovery of it for decades, and I can't say there's a one size fits all kind of thing that, some couples, what happens is after the discovery, there's a total shutdown from the betrayed person. Of course, some of it depends on what their sex life was even before the infidelity this was discovered. Oftentimes, when a person is having an affair, they slow down. There's not much intimacy between the partner, but not always. Sometimes there's a surprise. The person who's betrayed is surprised that the person had an affair because it seemed like their sex life was good and continuing. So there's lots of variations there. But so sometimes there's just a shutdown from one or both people. Definitely the person who was betrayed, and they just have a wall up, which is totally understandable. They've been devastated. The other thing I've seen with couples is sometimes the person who's betrayed because of their heightened anxiety, their sex life, their libido actually increases greatly. That it might be fear-induced libido, and they actually start to have sex more. They initiate more. They're more sexually aggressive. I've seen that as well. And then there's those where the differences aren't that pronounced, whether they've gone down a lot or up a lot. But what I want to talk about is what really works in the long term. In the couples where there's definitely a shutdown, that makes sense. There's protection, and we ultimately need to help the betrayed partner feel safe again. We need to help the person who betrayed to take a look at what made them do what they did. I've talked about this a lot in other presentations. And we ultimately need to make the relationship a safe relationship. In the couple where the betrayed person, whether it's the man or the woman or whoever, they are now suddenly wanting to have sex more. Again, that might be due to fear, that might be due to competitiveness. Um, it might be that it woke them up to, wow, I could lose you. And so all that can actually be even a turn on. It could be aphrodisiacs. But even though that happens, oftentimes there is an escape from the pain the betrayed person has to just try to uh, escape their panic, their anxiety, their sense of disconnection. And oftentimes the person who betrayed is very willing to because they're also anxious, they're insecure, they're afraid of loss. So this fear of loss leads them to have sometimes amazing sex after infidelity, but even then, it doesn't live out. It doesn't stay that way. It definitely is something that is short-lived because whether there's a shutdown reaction or and there's brakes applied or there's an accelerator of the sex life, in both cases, there's still ultimately pain that has to be dealt with. The pain always catches up, always catches up. We have to deal with it whether right up front or later. Like I said, every couple is different. Every partner who is betrayed is different. Every partner who did the betrayal is different. We're all different. But where we're the same is that we have to learn, we have to deal with pain. We can't do a little end around pain. We can't get around it. We can't do a pain bypass. Ultimately, that pain has to be confronted. What happened, the pain of it, the discovery of it, the anger, the hurt the betrayed person has, the feelings that the person who betrayed may have had uh, that led them to this somehow this need to do what they did. Their shame, their guilt, their hiding. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of emotional stuff that has to be talked about, processed, faced, felt, ultimately. A good sex life after infidelity, I've seen it happen many, many times. It is definitely not bad news here, but there's work to be done. And the work really has to do with being present for each other. It means being able to look at the parts of me that led me to do the betrayal, or the parts of me that I'm experiencing when I discovered the infidelity, and the parts of me that are young that led me to do the infidelity, or the parts of me that were young that led me to react. I mean, it's a bad deal it's never easy to discover your partner's cheated on you, but for many people who've betrayed, they also begin to be aware of these younger parts of them that maybe have been betrayed before, or maybe they didn't feel good enough about themselves before. And so ultimately, for a healthy sex life to happen, because of the crisis of infidelity, you can't get away with having a good sex life for the long term without dealing with those shadow sides, the painful sides, the wounded sides that has to be dealt with ultimately. Like I say, for some, they get together, there's a lot of limerence in right after, but it doesn't last because ultimately that other pain comes up. Person gets triggered and they go, what's going on? So you start to see a month later, 2 months later, um, even after an amazing sex life, suddenly that really slows down because there's hurt and there's anger that hasn't been dealt with. So a couple has to understand that even though they may have had a good sex life earlier in their relationship without a deeper connection, without dealing with pain, or maybe they did have a relationship where they dealt with pain, but not this kind of pain, the only way they're going to have a good sex life now is they have to become pips, partners in pain. Partners in pain. They have to be partners in pain. They have to learn how to develop the emotional muscle so they can stay present for each other, both people. I also, in the beginning, definitely I put a lot more on the person who betrayed to listen to the person who was the victim of that person's betrayal. We do need to, I think, have some kind of order of things to some degree, but it can't be like totally deal with the betrayed person for 1 year, and then after 1 year, now you have the person who did the betrayal. It doesn't quite work that way too, because each person has stuff. Each person has emotional stuff that may have led to some parts of the infidelity, and also the stuff that occurs because of the infidelity and the discovery of the infidelity. So we just, again, I'm going to say this for maybe the third time, is the way to have a healthy sexual connection with your partner after there's been betrayal. You can't get away with avoiding the tough stuff, and you're going to have faith that if you learn to deal with the tough stuff, that you don't quickly try to make it better. You slow it down. You practice understanding each other. You get each other. You get professional help because sometimes it's difficult to do without it. You make room for the other person's feelings and pain. You get curious. It's a big word in my dictionary when I work with couples. Curiosity. You got to get curious. Both people do. Definitely. It's important for the person who betrayed to get curious first about the experience of the person who was the victim of your betrayal. But ultimately, both people have to be curious about the other. Like, who are you now? I thought you were this, but you're not just this. For you to do that, you're that too, right? I see that a lot. See a couple where I thought I was married to a person who would never have cheated on me, and I was wrong about that person. So now I don't know who this person is. Well, the person is that person that you knew before, and that person is also the person that was capable of doing that. So we got to get to know those parts of each other. And we need to take the time to develop that kind of emotional connection, that emotional intimacy. So what happens, and it oftentimes isn't this quick process, is there's a certain deepening of safety between the two people. So where they may have felt safe before because they didn't deal with any of these kinds of ruptures, now the only way to create safety is to get curious, to be interested, to get to know each other and all your dynamics. And You thought this person was just this. Now you know this person's more of a kaleidoscope. There's other parts that could do that. You might, as the person who did the betrayal, might be seeing this person who used to always have their act together now out of control, crying a lot, angry, yelling. Maybe they hardly ever yelled. Now they're yelling a lot because you haven't seen that kind of betrayal pain. And so you got to get to know that part of that person. And again, you might need professional help to do this because we all get so defensive, get stuck in our own survival reactivities that what happens is the emotional closeness, the connection breaks down, and you can't get to that safety of two people that are now collaborating to be pips, those partners in pain. So that once we create that safety with this kaleidoscope of personalities that we've now discovered, it's suddenly from that safety place we can launch into sexual adventure. However that might look for every couple is different. So that's what I really wanted to say. That it's important for us to understand that there can very well be sexual intimacy after infidelity, and I can tell you I've seen people who their sex life. One of the reasons why it gets better. And I'm not minimizing the pain, but once people process it, learn to stay, they become those pips. That what's happening is there's sort of like a release of they're not hiding. So when you're not hiding, you're not just naked physically. In a way, you're more naked emotionally, and that can lead to more risk taking sexually, more like we've been through all this. Let's take some chances. Let's not play it too safe. So I've seen couples where their sex life is far more open and more adventurous than they were before. We tend to live in roles sometimes and get kind of rigid, and then the crisis. And I'm not saying it's a good thing; it's a terrible thing. There's definitely better ways to do this, but the crisis kind of blows up the rigid role structures, which opens up to maybe at some point when you pips dealing with this energy. What happens in the one I described with there's a lot of immediate increased sexuality. In a way, that does happen where we've released another part of each person, and there is a lot of energy there, a lot of libido, but you got to deal with the pain. You have to deal with the pain, have to deal with the parts that may not have displayed itself before. So there's hope, there's work, and then there's hope. Thanks for listening. This is Todd Krieger, making the world safe for love.